Welcome to AFL Access. My name is Joel, and today I'll be continuing our mid-season reviews, continuing through to the second round of the byes. Today I'll be looking at two teams who are sitting almost on the opposite ends of the ladder, but are encountering similar problems, and that will be the Brisbane Lions and the Sydney Swans. So first off today, we'll start with the Brisbane Lions, who, despite losing to Carlton, who recently fired Brenton Bolton, and apparently that's a way to win games, you just fire your coaches and you got the next one in the bag. But yeah, outside of losing to the Blues this weekend, they have been playing some very good football, an exceptionally promising football. At the time of this recording, before the Monday game with Collingwood and Melbourne, Brisbane are sitting 6th position with 7 wins, 5 losses, and a percentage of 103.1%. So you could say it has been a roaring success for the young Lions. I'm not proud of that one either. But yeah, that being said, sitting at 7-5, you can't help but think they probably should have won a couple more games, especially against the Dogs, the Dockers, and Carlton. Realistically, they probably should have won. Kept them goalless in the first quarter, and they still lost. That's really, really bad. But yeah, anyway, onto the positive side. There are a bunch of positives. The biggest one being their latest acquisition in Lachie Neale, who has delivered as advertised. He is currently averaging 32 disposals per game at a 80% efficiency, which is ridiculous. And what is also ridiculous is his 16 contested possessions per game. That is just insanity. No wonder Brisbane has just rocketed up the ladder. Also helped by youth, but we'll get to them next. But yeah, Lachie Neale delivered as advertised, being probably the best player for the Lions so far this year. Another new acquisition, Jared Lyons, has also been pretty serviceable, with him averaging 22 disposals per game after coming over from the Gold Coast. He should also help develop and prop up that young midfield for the future. Captain Dane Zorko, who even without Dane Beams, has been performing as advertised as a strong leader through the midfield. Maybe not as many possessions as he did last year, but he's still easily one of their best players, and has continued to lead from the front for the club, even in spite of all the people leaving in the past. Third-year player Hugh McCluggage has also been very good. He has averaged 22 disposals per game and 12 goals in total. So even though that isn't as great a numbers as you hope, it's definitely a sign of something to come, and I would like to see how he progresses in the second half of the year. The forward line for the Lions has been pretty strong. It's more of an average spread more than just like one player just kicking all the goals. You have Charlie Cameron currently sitting with an even ledger of 21 goals, 21 behinds. Eric Hipwood with 19 goals and 21 behinds, which is a bit annoying, especially since he is pretty much the key forward of the future. But yeah, outside of those two, they have 5 other players that have kicked over 10 goals, which is a pretty good even spread. However, as I'll get to, you probably want to see a couple more goals kicked, especially from key forwards like Eric Hipwood. Another really positive stride for the Lions has been the fact that they've turned the Gabba back into a fortress. Out of all 6 games they've played to date, they have won 5 out of 6. One of the losses coming to Collingwood, who just look like a juggernaut, and especially with a young defense, and again, I'll get to that, you kind of expect them to drop maybe one game. But yeah, they've looked exceptionally solid as of late, especially up in the Gabba. Now we must move on to the negatives of the Lions. And suffice to say, their defense can at certain times get exposed even in wins, sometimes their defense can look quite fragile. Like, for example, in round 1 when they played the Eagles kicked 6 goals to 1 in the first quarter. Now, that is a bit of a worry, and ultimately they did come back and even kept West Coast scoreless in, I think, in the third quarter. But still, if you're that, like with the Port video, as I said, if you're that far behind the 8 ball, it is really, really hard to come back. But, well, they did. Although that being said, the only loss they suffered up at the Gabba was an absolute trouncing in the hands of Collingwood, so they'll still need to probably work on that defense, especially if they make finals, because the other teams are gonna, there's blood in the water, they're not gonna let you off with ease. Out of all the top 8 teams, the Lions have conceded the most points with 1,014 points conceded, although they have scored more points than some of the teams in the top 8. But yeah, point is they've conceded a lot of points, and in fact, league-wide, they've conceded the 4th most points, just ahead of Gold Coast, Carlton, and shockingly, North Melbourne, as they've kind of played really, really well in the past couple of weeks. So it's kind of weird to see them at the bottom of that list. But anyway, getting back to the point, the defense can be exposed pretty badly. The midfield, even midfield might not be able to bail you out if you're getting absolutely flogged. But that being said, it's pretty much they're playing with house money this year, so even if they don't make far in the finals, it's just good experience to get for the team. And getting back to the forwards, even though this might seem a bit of just a nitpick, their kicking for goal is not great. They're kicked 149 goals to 151 behinds. Now, in some particularly close games, it's pretty paramount that you kick your goals. And again, like using an example recently, even though they did win the game, the match against Hawthorn, I thought kicking 6 behinds in the first quarter, if you don't take the most of your opportunities, you're gonna lose badly. Now, they did win, but you kick like 4 or 5 of those goals. I think the game gets a lot easier. Their percentage is boosted up. They might be closer to the top 4, but again, you really, really got to put teams away when you get the opportunity, and that's one thing I think Brisbane has struggled, especially Hipwood, who, even though he is going to be their key forward of the future, or present now, I guess, he needs to be kicking more goals than behinds, especially with the quality ball he gets. Now, this is more just a general thing for very young sides. I'm interested to see how they go down the stretch, because you do find a lot of younger teams do start to foot off the gas, and they might start losing games they probably should win, especially because they're young, hungry, but they're also getting tired, and that's something that I feel could very well be a possibility for the Lions. But, you know, hopefully with veteran depth, they can push for finals. But that being said, it will be interesting to see how they go. So we'll just take a quick look at their run home. First up, after the bye, they face St Kilda at Marvel. They face Melbourne at home. They travel to Western Sydney to play the Giants. They travel to Adelaide to play the Power. They play North at home. Hawthorn in Tasmania. The Dogs at home. The Suns at the Gabba. The Cats at the Gabba. And finally the Tigers in the MCG. Matches left, and 5 of them being at home. I really think Brisbane can win 7 out of those 10 matches and end up with a 14-8 record. So that should firmly entrench them in the top 8, but we shall see how they go. Again, I wouldn't put money on most of my predictions. They're not very good. Anyway, if I were to give Brisbane a grade, I'd give it a B. It's very promising. They're playing some very exciting football. Again, there are some moments where they lapse in concentration and might get smacked around by a bigger team, but I think they can I think at the very least they can make the finals. How far they go, it's up to them. And now we'll move on to Sydney, where if there's one thing that I've noticed about this season, it has been how brutally frustrating a lot of the teams have been. Sydney is probably one that falls into this category, although I feel they've played a lot more poorer games than really good games. They've been getting better, and we'll get to that. But it's just, it doesn't feel like it hasn't come together early on, and they've been really left in the dust for that. Anyway, at the moment, Sydney is currently sitting 14th with a 4-8 record. Their leading goal scorer is Tom Papley, shockingly, but not really shockingly. Anyway, but yeah, so we'll talk about the positives for the Swans. One major positive is they're playing a lot better than they were at the start of the year, which was, even though they've come back from 0-6 to make finals, it looked like a lot of their veteran players had aged as well as the bloke who chose poorly in The Last Crusade. Get it? I'm the pop culture guy. Anyway, they're playing a lot better football, which is good to see. They still have a lot of talent. A part of me says a lot of it's aging, and they're going to have to think about moving on because, as anyone who's observed any sports ever knows, Father Time is undefeated, and it doesn't matter how good the player is. There will eventually be a drastic drop-off in skill and quality. But yeah, probably one of their biggest contributors is not Anakin Skywalker, Jake Lloyd, who has pretty much just been dominating out of the back half for the Swans. Today he got 42 possessions and seemed to have just racked up a bunch of dream team points, contributing to his already stellar average of 31 disposals per game, and with currently 5 intercept possessions per game as well, which is always nice to see. Josh Kennedy, even though he has been injured and in and out of the side, has also played very well with a quality 28 disposals per game. Again, not as great as he has been in previous years, but all I can say is time is starting to slip away for the core for Sydney, and so we'll need to see improvement out of the younger blokes to go forward for this club. Luke Parker has also been pretty good with 25 disposals per game so far. Again, I haven't noticed much of him, but stats saying he's doing quite well, so I'm inclined to believe the stats at the moment. Yeah, I'm inclined to believe the stats, and we'll see if they can keep the midfield rolling for the Swans. Honestly, probably the best aspect of the Swans has been their defense, with Aliir, Dane Rampey, Callum Mills, and the aforementioned Jake Lloyd being probably the strongest contributors to it. Aliir and Rampey being particular standouts in my mind. Callum Mills has come back from injury, which kept him out of the team all of last year, but hasn't made as much of an impact, but he is still a quality player and should be one to look out in the near future. Anyway, one massive positive is that Aliir has developed in one of the best intercept defenders in the league, averaging a huge 8.3 intercept possessions a game, pretty much setting up run out of the back half, which a lot of the older veterans can't really do anymore. Like in the elimination final last year against the Giants, I honestly thought if Sydney win, it's going to be Aliir who's the best on ground. Pardon for that digression, but that's just how I see Aliir going forward, just being the one who will set up all the play out of the back half. Dane Rampey himself has just been like a good shutdown defender. In fact, Sydney's defense has been pretty stingy at the moment. Hasn't allowed many big scores to be kicked on them, well, since the earlier rounds. Again, the defense is starting to strengthen up, and even though their offense has been a bit slow, they're still able to kick a big score, as proven today. Speaking of the forwards, Tom Papley has played excellent football, 21 goals so far this season, has really freed up Buddy to do his own thing. Buddy still has some left in the tank, kicking 19 goals from 8 games. Again, how much time is left for Buddy, I don't know, but allowing for as Ryan put it, a forward structure that doesn't exclusively focus on Buddy and allows for him to kind of do his own thing and then kick goals like you saw today, kicking 5 goals for. A forward structure that suits him, gives him freedom, but also another threat just in case he's getting the heart attack. That is what Tom Papley has been, and also Sam Reid, who I think has really helped Buddy a lot. Just, again, another tall forward to hit up. If he's getting the focus from the top defender, Buddy gets a bit more freedom. But yeah, the forward line is starting to get the engine going, but it should be interesting to see how other teams deal with this new forward structure for the Swans going forward, and whether or not it will lead them to the promised land like in previous seasons. Now, for the downside of the Swans, a lot of their more veteran players like Kieran Jack, Jared McVeigh, and Heath Grundy have kind of just fallen off cliffs. It just happened. Father Time, again, undefeated. Heath Grundy, from what I observed, just was not the big shutdown defender who could play on tall forwards anymore, and just looked like a shell of his former self, so much so that he retired before the mid-season draft, so he was able to give Sydney enough space to try and pick up a good free agent player. Jared McVeigh also just looks old, can't keep up with speed, and if anything, that's just kind of a general thing with Sydney. I just don't think I think if a team's very fast, they're kind of stuffed. But they've also been playing a lot better, like I said. And Kieran Jack has been barely getting any game time and has not looked convincing on the field. But yeah, outside of maybe not being able to catch up or play against speed, Sydney have been, improving from earlier in the year when they looked dead and buried. Sure, they beat Carlton, but again, Carlton have been just quite disappointing. But now they've been getting closer, especially against Geelong in Geelong, which that has been a happy hunting ground for Sydney. Even with a, once a under-strength team, they still managed to take it to Geelong, and they only managed to push away in the last quarter. And kind of taking victories against the Roos down in Bluntstone and that controversial win against the Bombers. Anyway, Sydney, if I were to give them a grade, I'd give them a D+. Again, from the start of the year, looked dead and buried. Put a fork in them, they were done. But now they're starting to look a little bit better. I would hesitate to give them a C because I don't know how long this run will last, but, if I get to do them for the season reviews, I'll let you know my thoughts. But yeah, I'll just give them a D+ for now, and we'll see what the future holds for the Swans. So, if you would like the video, please give it a big thumbs up, subscribe to AFL Access, ring the bell to stay notified of all new content. We've still got another week to go, and guess what? I'll be doing the Crows, so you'll get to see a whole 4 or 5 minutes of just unchained ranting about the Crows, if that is something that you'd enjoy. Say subscribe. If you want to see me live react to Crows game or just general banter about football, please join our Discord. Link is in the description. And we're hoping to grow the community a bit more going forward. So please join. It's a whole lot of fun. This has been your AFL Access.